This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 531 for the week of November 30th, 2025. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Hey, what's this? So quick after the last one? Yeah, last podcast episode came out exactly on our 20-year anniversary. So now I'm going to try to get things back on what had been our regular bi-weekly schedule. And by my schedule, I mean, hey, it's me. It's Mike. You may see me around as Vegito EX, but we'll see on that schedule because you can't quite hear it in my voice. Maybe you can. I'm sick again. Longtime podcast listeners remember back in the ancient days 20 years ago when we were, in fact, on a weekly schedule. It seemed like I was sick all the time because I just catch things very easily. So I've tried to avoid that with the current schedule, but it seems as I get regular again, well, you're going to hear it more often. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about what we got on tap for this here episode. Doesn't matter too much if I'm sick because the topic is already recorded and edited. So here we go with it. I am chatting on the show today with Jay, previous podcast guest. You may see him around as Golden Portable. I was psyched to chat with Jay because Jay has been diving into old mobile pre-smartphone Dragon Ball video games. That is one of the niches upon niches that you can possibly be involved in and excited about. And I wanted to have him on to chat about that. In addition to that, he's doing some porting. Porting isn't even really the right word. It is reconfiguring from scratch with one of these games. So I thought it would be great to chat with Jay about that, see what he's up to, what we can learn about this old stuff, and hopefully get you excited to learn about some new things too. And that's it. That is what is on tap with this episode. So I'm going to get some fluids in me. We will get right on to the topic. I will see you on the flip side to wrap things up, and that'll be this episode. Here we go. Chatting with Jay. I am excited to welcome back to the show. I am sorry to say, has it been 5 years?
It has. 2020. It's a long time.
You may see him around as Golden Portable, PSP. We know him as Jay. Jay, welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast.
Thank you for letting me back on.
So I was just telling you, I've been watching some of your work from afar. I'm like, oh, this is the coolest shit in the world. And I messaged you about it and you're like, holy shit, I love this shit. So I'm psyched to talk to you. I kind of have two things that we're going to talk about. One is old pre-smartphone mobile games. And then, believe it or not, tied in with that is game design and programming. And I feel like these could not possibly be more up your alley. Can you kind of give a little bit of a reintroduction to yourself and some of the stuff you do?
Yeah, first of all, I'm Golden Portable, or you can also find me under Golden PSP. I am been in a part of the Dragon Ball community for probably the past 10 or 15 years, mainly in the modding community. So I've, talked to a lot of people in terms of modding games like Super Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Z Budokai, extracting assets, that kind of stuff. But one of the big things that had really caught my eye were mobile games, specifically not for iPhone or Android, because, this day and age, people are aware of those. But, I grew up at a time where, around 2006, 2007, where you had a flip phone and you could download little tiny micro games similar to Flash games. But over in Japan, this was a lot more prevalent. A lot of your favorite anime franchises, One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball, also had, little tiny mobile games. And Dragon Ball, of course, had tons of them, 10, 20 plus of these games. And they span from a wide range of different genres. You had everything from fighters, card games, pinball games, just pretty much everything. But one of the major problems with these games is the preservation aspect of it, because, back in 2007, 2008, the way to back up these games for your flip phones was not as streamlined as it is now, which means that once these services, in this case for Dragon Ball, there was a service called Dragon Ball Mobile that would host all these games. Once that was shut down, there was no easy way to retrieve these games and play it. So for the longest time, and we talked about this in the last time I was on the podcast, these games were kind of like lost media that you just couldn't access. You can only see through like magazine articles or stuff online. We'd even really have like YouTube videos that you could find of these. There are only a select number of these games that you could find, under YouTube or other sites that hosted videos up until around 2023, 2024, where the Katai World and the Katai Archive community started buying up these phones, and anytime they had a game on it, now in 2023, they're able to extract these games off. They have, emulators set up. So now you're able to play these games. So it's bringing these games back into the forefront. So now on your computer, on your Windows computer, you're able to play these just as you would back in 2006, 2007. And I've been taking a step forward in terms of just like being able to crack these games open and pull out their assets. So pulling out sprites and, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's been my hyperfixation over the past couple months.
Yeah, I love it. There's a few things that get me thinking. I was a working adult at this time. My flip phone was one of those phones. Obviously, Japan had way more advanced stuff than we did.
Oh, yeah.
But beyond even just Snake, like there were these tiny little, like what was even the resolution on these? It was like 64 by 64 or some shit. Like it wasn't much.
It was a wide range. But yeah, most of them were pretty small.
I certainly had some. And you use the phrase lost media, and this is one of those instances where it's accurate. As you said, these aren't up on a server anymore. These aren't maintained by the publishers, the developers anymore. The only way you can play these is, like you said, for the preservationists to literally buy old phones, see if there's anything on them, and if there is, extract the games off of them.
It really is a race against time too, because like a lot of these are either just the batteries are ticking time bombs, or the run the phone, or people would jump.
Yeah. Oh shit! I gotta check my PSP. My PSP's gonna explode. I gotta look.
Ooh, man, that happened to my PSP, my first PSP. So yeah, there's the very big risk that some of these games that we're looking for just will not be found.
The other thing it reminds me of is, as we were doing news stories, as I was more regularly buying V-Jump, I've been talking about this a little bit on the podcast recently, where I kind of have this black hole of post 1998. Unfortunately, it's when Yu-Gi-Oh comes on the scene. Those magazines you just can't get. Like once Yu-Gi-Oh's around and there are cards, like there's an entire span of years I just have nothing for. And I've got little bits and pieces. Like I have one issue from 2000. I have like one issue from 2002 or 2003. And you flip through those, and this is like the dead zone, so to speak, of Dragon Ball stuff. We were starting to get console games again as Budokai came around on the PS2. But you flip through and it's like, oh, there's half a page dedicated to this mobile game that I just never paid attention to. And we didn't really start to cover them until smartphone games came around. I still remember a lot of the early titles like Ultimate Swipe and Dragon Ball RPG, Boyhood Arc. There were those like first round of smartphone games before it really turned into the gacha really ecosystem for like Dokkan and Legends and stuff. But yeah, there's this whole middle period of all this stuff. And so I want you to tell me a little bit more about these games and these kinds of games and what there was out there. You already hinted that there's a wide range of genres, and there's one in particular that we're going to talk about today. But what was the landscape of Dragon Ball mobile games? Again, mobile being pre-smartphone, flip phone games.
So I would say like the vast majority of them were, your standard fighting games. So you had, Ultimate, I think it was Ultimate Versus or Ultimate Blast. It shared the name with...
yes, I was going to ask about that because there's been some duplicates that we didn't realize.
Yeah, which made it hard to even look up. That was one of the actual few mobile games that actually had a YouTube link that I could find to it because it was a later mobile game. Then you get into like platformer games. Like there's a Dragon Ball Mobile like Trunks game, sort of in the vein of Advanced Adventure, that is also poorly named. There is, a Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure clone actually that's in there. But then you move into like the weirder realm, where you get stuff like the pinball game, like I mentioned before, which there's also a pinball game on the TV, like the plug and play TV games that you can get in America. There is the card games that you can get, both like the standard trading card style games where there's unique cards, but then also stuff like solitaire and blackjack. So they're throwing the gambit around. They have sort of Mario Party-esque games, and then kind of the weirdest one that you were kind of hinting to was Dragon Ball Racing, and it's both weird and not weird because Dragon Ball has a very rich history of cars in general. Akira Toriyama drew nothing but vehicles and cars, and in his extended body of work. And then also they reference, racing in the new Dragon Ball Super manga. So like with a Mario Kart-esque video game that shows up, in the manga by Toyotaro. So it was kind of interesting to see like, hey, all these people on the internet were kind of clamoring for this Dragon Ball racing game. And we technically already have it, or at least Japan had it. Yeah, it's a super wide range that honestly I kind of miss that period. Not that current Dragon Ball is lacking in diversity, because compared to a lot of series, Dragon Ball does have a vast variety of games that we that get made. But it kind of felt like the Wild West, back in 2007, 2008, between mobile games. You had your console and arcade games. You had flash games, so that's another area that I've dived into a lot, because you just have small companies. Hey, we need to advertise some product, or we just want to do a celebration event. Just have a small team craft up a flash game, and either put it on like Jumpland or just put it online. So there was just so much Dragon Ball content.
I think that's an interesting aside. I actually have that Jumpland game. What year? See if they're even a year on this. JLCDT001. I don't remember what year this is from. There's got to be a year in here somewhere. Is there no year printed on this thing?
Are you talking about the trial CD?
Oh, 2003.
Yeah, 2003.
This is 2003. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. They had a Jumpland website that you could walk around and stuff. And I want to say this is probably just a replication of that at that time. It's got like MIDI files and like quizzes and stuff on there. Yeah, they made all sorts of things back then. What I would like you to do is give us a little introduction to the one specific game. You mentioned the racing game. Tell us about it. Tell us its title, when it came out, like anything and everything you know about this one particular game.
Yeah, so Dragon Ball Racing was released around June of 2009. And compared to all these other mobile games I referenced before, this game was interesting because it's actually in full 3D. So it does use sprites, but it's using sprites moving through a 3D landscape. You had 4 different characters in the trial that you could download for free, being Goku, Bulma, Piccolo, and Vegeta, each with custom carts. And you would be able to drive around a custom track. At least in the trial, you would drive around Roshi or Kami-Sen's island. It was interesting because in the full version, you had a lot more characters that you could download. Because the iMode service is down and has been taken out. We don't immediately have access to these characters, but these characters, you would be able to download them and bolster up your roster. I would say it looks a lot like a Mario Kart type game. Really looks closer to like Mario Kart 64, where it's that mix of 3D with standard sprites moving around. It really took advantage of the limited power on the hardware that was being ran. But what I kind of wanted to do, because it is trapped on this smaller device, the resolution is not super great. I wanted to be able to take this and port it to a different console. And, I've done a lot of homebrew game development in the past. I have an itch page that has separate homebrew games for the GBA. One is a recreation of Dragon Ball Z, The Legacy of Goku 2's Overworld. So I just wanted to test my ability to do, Mode 7 style movement, and then a recreation of Advanced Adventure. But I wanted to try doing PlayStation 2 homebrew development. And once that Dragon Ball Racing game was found, a bell went off in my head. I was like, this seems like the perfect experiment for me. And so that kind of led me into taking this and working on my next project, which is porting Dragon Ball Racing to the PlayStation 2.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the technical side of that. We kind of live in this golden era, at least this burgeoning golden era of decompilations, recompilations, porting. So what is your process for this tiny little game from, was it Java or?
It is Java.
What actually was the platform? This one was Java. Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know. Does that make it easier? I don't know anything about this. What is your process for porting this tiny little Java cell phone game to the PS2?
Yeah. So, first of all, I need to be able to extract all the assets out. And luckily, because it's based in Java, and these archives, you can easily extract them. There are programs out there that will, take the archive, look through it, and take every image, audio file, so on and so forth out. Yeah. Now, what doesn't come with it is actual, source code. So a lot of that has to be me playing this game over and over again, seeing like, how does this work? How's it work? And the thing with the port, because this is not like a straight one-to-one porting of the game, because I don't have the source code, I have to make changes in order to make sure it works, especially because, we have different resolution on the PlayStation 2 versus, this game. Different ways to render. And to give context on the PlayStation 2 environment, nowadays, like, you hit the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, you are welcomed with standard game engines. If you know Unreal or Unity, those kind of like came into prominence around the PS3, PS4 era of game development. But back in the PS2, that was the era where developers were creating or using mostly their own engines, and they had essentially a lot of middleware that would allow you to make these games. So and a lot of those engines just have never been brought over to the homebrew side. So that requires homebrew developers such as myself to do a lot of the back end stuff ourselves. So I have to, when I'm porting Dragon Ball Racing, I have to do my own collision detection. I have to handle all, perspective transforms and all the kind of things that make 3D game development a little bit difficult.
So you're basically making a new game as best you can with your best guess and your best game design chops out of like the skeleton, the remains of what you have here.
Exactly. And it's really just, I've played a lot of games. I've analyzed a lot of games. And so you learn kind of the tricks of the trade. And it's a lot easier now because emulators such as Dolphin have stuff like FreeCam, which allow you to essentially like fly around the scene, the game scene, and see like how they do stuff behind the scenes to optimize stuff like, hey, the skybox is actually just, a giant inverted
sphere
and this stuff is hidden there. And so as I'm playing Dragon Ball Racing, I notice them doing a lot of the same techniques. Now, one thing that I did run into is, and something I was surprised about is, the lack of, or the limitations in terms of like poly counts and polygons that you can push onto the PlayStation 2. And it really gave me an appreciation for these developers and how they optimized, these game engines. Because in the interim between getting or taking the sprites from Dragon Ball Racing for the karts, I decided to go into or download Fighter Z models for the flying karts and use those as like stand-ins. Just those like standard like lobby avatars and the sprite and their karts, tons and tons of tries and vertices, which just made it impossible to bring into the game or into the PlayStation 2 port without decimating them some. And so you kind of have appreciation for, one, the people who make these models in the first place, and two, the people who have to sit around count vertices and see how can I make this as lightweight as possible.
Yeah, just kind of going both ways there. You've got, like you're talking about with the modern games, trying to bring it into the old one. You're like, oh, it's just this tiny little cart. Like, I could at least be able to get this on the screen on the PS2. Look how small it is. Like, oh, no, this has the entire number of polygons. It's like the entirety of this game. I can't make this work. But then as you're also bringing something forward, you're like, oh, how do I then make this work on just completely different architecture? That's wild to me. How much, yeah. So what's your end goal with this? A lot of it to me seems to be just absolute fascination. And I love that. I can appreciate that. It's like, I'm just going to get this working. Watch me get this working. So I love that. Obviously, it's not like you're going to commercially release Dragon Ball Racing for the PlayStation 2. That can't happen. Do you have any idea of what you do want to do with it at some point?
Essentially, I want to set it up so that other fans can swap in their own carts and just make it into like a plug and play kart game, with the back end just being that Dragon Ball Racing. I like to tie it to Dragon Ball Racing because, I'm a Dragon Ball fan and that piques my, hyperfixation. But by having that skeleton, I have it up on GitHub. Once I reach that point where I'm like, hey, this looks cool, it'd be nice to, have people extend the game and kind of make it their own. So that's like my ultimate goal.
That's so cool. So it's less that you're making Dragon Ball Racing, but more than making your own game just with this asset set that someone could then take and swap in with other stuff down the road. It kind of reminds me, I never actually played it myself, but Bid for Power was that the Quake mod that existed back in the day? Yeah. I know at some point they got a C&D on it, and so they just turned it into like their own game with their own assets down the road. I think I'm thinking of Bid for Power. Hopefully someone else who's as old as me can remember the specific details on that. But it reminds me a little bit of that. We're like, I'm making it with this, and then, we'll turn it into this on the side.
I do remember that getting taken down.
Yeah.
I also just want to get people, excited about PlayStation 2 homebrew development, because that is something where, 5-6 years ago, there wasn't really a scene. And just now, just in the past 2 years, there's been an explosion in that with new tools. The environment that I've been using is Athena environment. There's a huge community of people who are passionate about it and really accept people asking questions and building onto the engine. So giving them visibility is the next other thing. That's
great. I would love to see that. The PS2 is obviously, as I talked about in the most recent podcast episode, our podcast was contemporary with the PlayStation 2. So I clearly have a lot of nostalgia and feelings about that system. There's so much good stuff on that system. And maybe you can just speak to this a little bit. The modding and hacking scene for the Budokai games and the Sparking games. I mean, Latin America has just taken that to the next level, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. They had Budokai 4 years before Sparking 0.
Yeah. Don't you know they have Budokai 4 in Japan? No, actually it's in Mexico.
Oh man. Yeah. And even like Super Dragon Ball Z, you got people making crazy mods with it. So, I really feel like that era, people just have such a fascination with it. And, that's really kept like, Dragon Ball Z as a gaming franchise, at the forefront. It's crazy to see a series like Dragon Ball, that started in the 80s still going hard, with the, gaming community like we do.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to play Moro. There are ways to play Moro in video games. I'm curious if you have any recommendations, but while you think of it, again, the PS2 means a lot to me. And I think there's so much unexplored stuff out there, whether it's hacks or translations. I got to give a shout out to Hilltop, who did a translation of Boku no Natsuyasumi 2, which is one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had in my life. And just to see what they had to do to it, because the narration was actually vertical in that game because it's Japanese. So you can write top to bottom, right to left. And they adjusted it so it goes at the bottom of the screen, left to right for the English text. Like even that kind of thing. Can you speak to that? Like what kind of involved crazy decision making and reprogramming has to go into something like that, even just translating a game?
Something that people like don't think about is like the limited amount of space and like characters that you have versus like Japanese and bringing stuff to English. So like it takes a second to like determine like, hey, how do I bring that in? And then also like not breaking specific type of code, replacing assets, especially like when you're trying to create like high definition style mods or stage mods. You have to do a little bit of like manipulation of textures and determining like, hey, what can I cut out, what can I keep in. Yeah, the modding scene, like they're like straight magicians. They're people who are much deeper into it than I am.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for either projects or hacks or cool things you've seen out there that folks are doing?
Man, I'm put on the spot, so unfortunately,
I know.
unfortunately not. But if you go to my Twitter, maybe I can, or my we don't do Twitter anymore. My Blue Sky.
I've seen you post it more often. It's good. Come on.
I'm trying to move on because a lot of the community is over in Blue Sky. But I think what I'll do is try to shout out some of the community in that way.
What else is cool about old Dragon Ball stuff like this? Just the old smartphone games or anything? Like, what have you seen that folks either just don't know about or maybe should have a bigger appreciation for?
And it's funny because, I feel like that's all I post about is old stuff. Probably like the plug and play games that were coming out. For instance, like the Dragon Ball Z and One Piece crossover game that was released, I think, around like 2006, 2007. Just that like line of games that were released. When people talk about every Dragon Ball game, they kind of skip out on experiences like that. And actually those games aren't super hard to acquire. I got a copy of it, of some of these off of, Japanese Mercari and so on and so forth for $20, $30. So I would definitely recommend, trying to experience these games and see what they have to offer.
Yeah, it's very doable. I remember I answered someone's question on Reddit about it one time. They were like, oh, I saw this old thing on this forum and, I want it and I can't find anything for it. And then my suggestion was, you got to use the Japanese title to search for it. You look in English, you're not going to find much. And immediately, I found them on Mercari. I'm like, here's a link to buy it for a few bucks. And yeah, they're readily available. People are just dumping that stuff. Were it not for the current state of tariffs and everything going on, I would say like now is the golden time. 6 months ago was the golden time to buy all this stuff, but maybe it'll come around.
Yeah,
again.
Going into kind of what you were talking about with lost media, a lot of stuff just isn't lost. It's just you have to get smart at how you search for it. Also, while we're on this topic, Chinese bootlegs. That's something that I've been talking about with various members of the community. Vaughn DBZ on Twitter. He helped me track down a version of a Chinese bootleg of Dragon Ball that continued the story of Dragon Ball after I think the end of the Muscle Tower arc of Red Ribbon Army. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one because they just decided to create their own story from there. And I always found it interesting because a lot of these fan fictions and a lot of these, like, this was pre GT back in the early 90s. And so it's just like a different vibe in terms of like hey, what do, people in China, how would they extend the story of Dragon Ball even while the series is still running? And so what they did is they tied it to a lot of Chinese, mythology and books, which I thought was really interesting because, Dragon Ball is based off of Journey to the West.
Oh yeah, that seems like a natural route to go. I like that because sure, there's like Super Butoden 5 and ports of other stuff to the NES, to Famicom, but something like that's an original story, an original take on it. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them. There's I think it's known here as like Dragon Ball Zero Verse, but in China it had a separate name. And then also there was the Dragon Ball GT manga that I found very intriguing.
Yeah.
Where they were essentially like hand drawing everything starting from the beginning of the series to the end of the baby arc in manga format, to varying quality. It was weird because it would jump from looking pretty decent, traced, and to like some of the most god awful art that you've seen. I just appreciate the effort that they put into it. So
love it. I think my last question for you, I don't know if you can answer this question, actually. I saw you answer the call regarding the Superstation.
Oh, yeah. So all this talk of, homebrew development. One of the things, the projects I worked on, and this was actually spawned from working on the Kanzenshuu wiki. Specifically, I was working on the page for Shinran no Nazo, which in America is Dragon Power. I created a game that was based off of, the fighting mini game that you had in that game. I called it Sun's Dojo for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And Taki Udon, he's releasing or he's partnered with a team that's creating essentially a FPGA style PlayStation 1 that can also play different other consoles. And he was looking for homebrew developers to, include their games or demos of their games as a demo disc for the PlayStation, which that reminded me of, the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, they had these demo discs that you could always get off like PlayStation Magazine. So I was like, somebody was like, hey, Golden PSP, Jay, can you include your game? Do you want to include your game in here? I was like, heck yes. And to my surprise, Taki Udon, he responded is like, yeah, this game's awesome. I'll include it on there. And so.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So
I'm psyched. Yeah. I've played it. I think I showed you at some point. I threw it on my analog pocket. It looks great there. So yeah, I'm psyched if that does get included for people to check it out there too. But folks, if they want, they can just download that from your itch, I think.
Yep, it's completely free. You can donate if you want, but yeah, go ahead and go on there. And I'm always posting new games on there. I have the 3 homebrew Dragon Ball games on there, including Dragon Ball Racing, that I'm currently porting over on my itch. So feel free to give it a look and subscribe or follow so that you can get updates whenever I push more.
Love it. Well, let's try to not make it 5 years before we chat again. Jay, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm psyched to see your work out there. I'll be psyched at some point in the future for people to see all the stuff you did on the wiki as well. There's a lot of great stuff in there. God, all the sprites you ripped and stage names and backgrounds and everything you ripped to include there.
That came straight from my passion for Budokai 1.
Yeah.
My favorite PlayStation 2 game.
Jay, what's the best place for people to check you out?
So I do have a YouTube channel. You can find me under Golden.
Oh my God, we didn't talk about that. I love your YouTube videos.
Yeah, so actually that's another area where going on the podcast back in 2020 inspired me to, I had actually created assets to start that channel, but I didn't actually officially start it up until 2024. And, between posting about just random games that, I'm interested in, I also talk, somewhat about prototype games, development for certain games. I even had a developer for, that worked with Webfoot and on the Legacy of Goku 2 and some of the other games kind of pop in and, give background information on those games. So I made a video about that. So, definitely check that out. Check out my channel because I'm posting more and more stuff on that.
Love it. Yeah, there are very few things I can watch online these days, and yours is one of them. So I'm not sure what that means or how you want to take that, but I love it. It gets my seal of approval. Yeah. So I'll link the YouTube, I'll link the Blue Sky, I'll link whatever else you want me to link. Check out kanzenshuu.com for all the links to that stuff. Jay, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, dude.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Jay for joining me to chat on the show about all that awesome stuff. Again, check out Jay's links. I've got them all up on the site. Check out his itch, his YouTube, all the cool things. So what we got going on the site right now, I had a bunch of just like background site projects is the best way I can describe it. So I didn't quite get to that sparking character gallery that I mentioned last week, but that's still on my job list. I know Heath's been doing some catch-up work in the episode guide. And I've kind of been doing a little bit of everything. I want to get back to some of the articles I've mentioned here on the show and in some Patreon posts. Hey, speaking of Patreon, after the last episode went up, I shared a bunch of images from history across space and time of this podcast over on the Patreon for Kanzenshuu, patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. It is a free post. If you like what you hear, you're curious to see where it all came from, I went back to the literal beginning of the show. I have some handwritten notes from the first couple of podcast episodes, took some photos of those. I've got a convention photo. I've got some other photos of things. So just check it out. I thought it was fun to continue that tour down memory lane there with some photos. So that's up for free. Check it out. Other things going on. I've got another box of magazines on the way. They are currently blasting it in a rocket ship from Japan over to here. So next time we talk on the show, I will hopefully have some new research findings to share. I think with that said, let's wrap it up here. You already heard it, but patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. Thank you for helping keep the lights on every month. We will see you most Saturday nights over at grabyournearest.com, aka twitch.tv/VegettoEX. Again, most Saturday nights. We were just on this weekend. We'll be back again this coming weekend, so be sure to tune in. I guess that's it. Thank you again to Jay. Check out all his stuff. I do have links to everything up on the main site for the show post. That is enough for now. Thank you. I got to get out of here. I will edit what little I have recorded here. It's already taken a toll on me. Stay tuned for other stream announcements and stuff. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time here on the podcast. Again, thank you, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye.